Anyone who is up to date on financial matters and the Canadian industry is well aware that Canada is made up of monopolies, or more specifically, oligopolies. They're everywhere.
If you want to understand why your grocery, utility, telephone, internet, airline prices, and every other bill you get or pay every month is more expensive, this is a big chunk of why. Inflation isn't always the sole reason for price increases, despite what companies would lead you to believe. Inflation has averaged 3.5% per year over the last 5 years, or 17.4% in total. Yet Canadian household bills over the same period have increased a lot more than that. This is part 3 in Aaron's series, The Downfall of Canada.
Competition, or lack thereof.
A monopoly is having only one company be in control of an entire market, whereas an oligopoly is a market structure that consists of a small number of firms that have substantial influence over a certain industry or market. Often, these companies will impose barriers to entry against other competitors from entering that industry sector. Because there is no dominant force in the industry, companies may be tempted to collude with one another rather than compete, which keeps non-established players from entering the market. Oligopolies are exactly what Canada has in abundance and create higher profit margins and fewer choices for consumers.
Competition. There is a severe lack of competition in Canada, and we know this. When we start looking around at, we have competition. Not really. If you look at key industries such as banking, telecommunication, airlines, groceries, and if you really look at all those main companies and their subsidiaries, you're kind of like, do we have competition? Do we have real effective competition that we can shop, compare prices, or we only have basically 3 or 4 companies to choose from? This often causes higher prices, more wealth inequality, lower productivity and innovation, lower investments, fewer startups, and lower wages.
They have alternative and they have choice.
Do you think Canadians have alternative and choice in this marketplace?
Very much so.
And you're saying that with a straight face.
The Globe and Mail summarized this in just 4 words: lackluster and getting worse. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm Aaron, a 20-year corporate accountant and analyst living in Western Canada. I discuss personal finance, investing, and apparently the downfall of Canada and factors related to it. If that's something you'd be interested in, consider subscribing and like this video if you find you eventually get something out of it. Canada's economy has less competition than what it used to, and a 20-year analysis reveals it's getting worse, not better. Just recently in the US, District Judge Ahmet Mehta ruled that Google was a monopolist and acted as one to maintain a monopoly in that sector. This was a surprise to absolutely no one, but at the same time was a shocker to everyone. Nowadays, it is extremely common for monopolies to exist in a variety of industries, but regulators usually look the other way, and everyone anticipated that they would keep doing the same in this case. The Canadian government and certain regulators, the people that usually break up monopolies, have allowed, enabled, and in some cases even promoted certain key sectors to be controlled by only a select few. One company will often merge with another company, and when it's happening, they'll pump and promote this will be good for everybody and help ensure lower prices. However, after the merger happens and years have gone by and people start to notice their bills start to creep up and they start calling these companies, to everyone's amazement, these companies that were so eager to discuss the benefits of mergers and acquisitions are suddenly unavailable for comment.
TELUS won't talk. Bell and Rogers send us to their industry rep.
When most people say the word monopoly, we think of that classic board game we used to play as kids. Heck, still play. But how do you win at Monopoly? Well, by buying up all the surrounding sections or controlling a certain portion of the board. That way, when someone lands on your property, you can jack up and charge a higher rate because you control that little section of the board. People lose the game because eventually they land on your property, you have 2 hotels on it, and they just can't afford to pay the price you're asking. They're out of money. Well, some people I'm sure will say, monopolies are a form of capitalism. It's just how businesses run. Well, say one smaller player enters the market, already dominated by a larger big player. Well, one tactic that they do and use is to drop their prices because they already control the market and they have deeper pocketbooks, so they can afford to lower their prices, which the other guy who doesn't have maybe as deep a pocketbook can afford. They lower their prices, customers flock to the bigger guy because they have the lower prices. Eventually, the little guy can't afford to stay in business and either goes bankrupt or gets bought out by the larger company. Once they buy that little guy out, they go back and jack up their prices again. This was never much of an issue 30, 40 years ago. However, now people are starting to notice more and more that they have less selection than they used to have. The government created the Competition Act, which is supposed to encourage more competition. However, it wasn't written that correctly and is still very hard for new competitors to get into the Canadian market. Not as bad as, say, China, but it's pretty up there. That's why if you look at the largest companies in Canada currently, the average founding year is 1914. In the US, it's 1944. A marketplace investigation into the cost of telecom services, just wondering why prices are so high for, say, wireless communications. Examples and explanations given were costly operating margins and a sparse Canadian population. For reference, Canada's cost per gigabyte is 7 times more expensive than Australia, 25 times more expensive than France and Ireland, and 1,000 times more expensive than Finland.
Canadians pay some of the highest cell service prices in the world, handing the big three billions every year.
Why is Canada so expensive?
Cell phone servers in Canada are severely overcharging.
Where's the competition?
If communication companies are trying to claim that cell phone data plans and internet services are so expensive in Canada due to the population being low and extremely dispersed over a large landmass, then these are simply excuses for high charges. The reasons are: 1. The majority of services used by Canadians are in major urban populated areas just like in Australia. Cell phone companies have very limited installing of towers and services all over the entire country, such as the provincial northern regions and territories. 2. Australia has close to the same sized landmass relative to its population size as Canada, with just as much dispersion, and Australians enjoy much lower rates and plans than Canadians.
The download of Wednesday on Netflix? The average user in Australia would pay $1.63 for that. By comparison, the average user in Canada, $10.22.
Oh my God. That's so much money. It's just pretty scary that that's your normal there in Canada.
By contrast, India and China have some of the lowest prices for mobile data and telecom services due to their large population, aggressive competition, and government policies aimed at improving digital access. To add to this, many consumers don't realize that Virgin, Fido, Koodo are all owned by these 3 major players.
They put these fake competitors like Fido or Koodo or Chatter or even Virgin Mobile to create the illusion of competition.
You call them fake competitors because they're still owned by the big giant companies.
All those brands are owned 100% by Bell, Telus, and Rogers.
Canada's oligopoly is uniquely protected by regulations that make it difficult for smaller providers to enter the market. This type of corporate power, protected by the government, keeps prices high and stifles productivity and innovation. As US journalist Andrew Kone once noted, our telephone companies and cable companies were handed local monopolies by the state effectively to do with as they pleased. Okay, so you might wonder, why am I listening to this? Like, what does it matter to me? Well, how often are you with only one service provider and all of a sudden your internet starts not working very well? Well, what are your options? Say you're with Telus. Well, where are you going to go? Well, you could go to maybe Bell or Rogers, Shaw, and after that, you don't have a ton of options. Like, where else are you going to go? So if you don't like the service there, you have basically 2 other options to choose from. That's it. Many of you might not remember this, but I do. About 25 years ago, when AT&T came to Canada, and all of a sudden I got a notice in the mail from Telus, and they were dropping their average bill per month, our rates, by 70%, 70. And I was baffled. I remember looking at the bill saying, They dropped it by 70%. I was overpaying by 70% for years. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they could afford to lower their rates that much. Sure enough, as AT&T got dissolved and left Canada, well, the rates went back up. Just take a look at Petro-Canada, Government Railways, CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. These monopolies and oligopolies encouraged by a regulatory environment that restricts competition and serves the interests of powerful corporations rather than everyday consumers. Feel free to leave me any comments on what you think is contributing to the downfall of Canada, as I'm sure everyone has an opinion. I answer every single comment and question that I get personally.
Now, let's take a look at the airline industry.
Two major players control about 80% of the business, with the average flight in Canada being more than almost every other developed country in the world. The price for an average flight from Vancouver to Montreal is $339. However, in the US, from Seattle to New York, it's only $155, and the distance is 100 miles more. This is between major cities, so it'll cost less per kilometer than, say, Vancouver to Saskatoon, which will cost $300. In the US, if you took a flight from San Francisco to Chicago, you have 4 airlines competing for your business. However, if you take Edmonton to Montreal, you only have Air Canada to pick from on this route. This gives them allowance to increase their ticket prices as your options are limited. Competition only exists on the high-volume routes due to economies of scale, similar to one small town in, say, the Yukon that only has one mechanic. You either go to that one mechanic and bring him cookies, or drive 8 hours to the next town through rugged terrain and perhaps harsh weather to the next mechanic. I've already done my research and I knew the answer, but I consulted ChatGPT to see what it would say. Here was the result. Number 5, high operating costs, labor and infrastructure costs. 4, foreign carrier restrictions. Canada has strict regulations on foreign airline competitions, which limits the entry of low-cost international carriers, unlike in the European Union, where open sky agreements allow airlines to freely operate across borders. Canada's airspace is less open to foreign competitors. This limits the availability for cheaper alternatives for some domestic and even some international flights. Number 3, geography and low population density. As I touched on, this is economies of scale. The airline services a small population that's more spread out, so there's less revenue generated per flight with hitting these smaller areas because there are fewer passengers. Number 2, high taxes and fees. Airlines are not immune to overtaxation, just like Canadians. These include airport improvement fees, security charges, and government-imposed surcharges. These additional costs are passed on to consumers, increasing the overall price of airfare. For instance, airport fees at major Canadian airports like Toronto Pearson have some of the highest in the world, which directly impacts ticket prices. And of course, the number one reason that ChatGPT said we have higher airline ticket prices is limited competition. You'll hear a very similar story if I explain why we have higher grocery prices, so I won't bore you with that and make you sit through it, especially because I've already done 2 videos on the subject, which I'll link up above right here. I actually did a deep dive on why we have higher grocery prices. Another Canadian investment channel I watch and really like, hosted by Richard Coffin. He has his own small channel of 950,000 subscribers. You may have heard of it, The Plain Bagel. He also did a similar video to mine of why we have high grocery prices, the reasons behind it. Riding on my coattails of success. Aren't you, Richard? For shame. What a copier.
He's trying to copy it.
No, it's actually a really good video. Be sure to check his out. Right after you watch both of mine. I won't spoil his video or my 2 videos as they're real cliffhangers. But in a nutshell, 5 major grocery stores, 3 Canadian, 2 American, control 88% of the Canadian market. They control the wholesale and distribution markets, so they control what products go onto store shelves and what prices to charge.
You're experiencing unprecedented profits while people are struggling. How do you square that with the record bonuses that you and your colleagues are receiving?
Last week, 30 pounds was $3.20.
Also, of these 5 major grocery stores, 3 of them have all these smaller related companies operating beneath them that they also own. On the surface, it looks like there's a lot of competition, but when you dive into the details and see how all these companies are actually related, well, is there a lot of competition? John Stuart Mill, British philosopher and economist, wrote, "The tendency of all monopolies, whether in business or in spheres of life, is to reduce competition, lessen the availability of choices, and limit freedoms. Ultimately, those who hold the monopoly dictate the terms for all others." Banks. 6 Canadian banks own 90% of all Canadian mortgages. There used to be 7, but with the recently approved government merger between HSBC and Royal Bank, we're down to only 6. That's okay. I'm sure all of these savings, just like the big companies are saying, will go directly right into your pocket. The Canadian government, for a long time, has done little to stop this. What are we supposed to rely on Trudeau and, well, the fabulous job he's done? He's not doing a very good job. Big shocker on that one. New competitors are deterred from entering the Canadian market, and also under monopolies, employee wages are 10 to 15% lower on average. The Competition Bureau was created to deter monopolies from happening. However, it has no real power. It can go up and tap companies on the shoulder and ask them, try to persuade them not to merge, and that's about it. Take a look at probably the most famous example of a monopoly, Standard Oil, when it was owned by John Davidson Rockefeller, when he had his oil company in the US and it had to be broken up because it was too big. Do you think that people under his rule and his employees and everybody else shared in its wealth? Do you? Some would argue that this is capitalism. However, capitalism is encouraging competition and productivity and innovation to get the best of the best into the market, not limiting competition, as we've seen in Canada. It's dominated by only a few key players, and this is heavily encouraged and regulated by the Canadian government. We have to get more competition allowed and into Canada to help lower prices for everyday Canadians, the working and middle class. Well, that's about it, guys. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Consider subscribing if you want to learn about personal finance and investing. And if you're interested in learning more about the downfall of Canada from a 20-year Canadian corporate accountant and analyst living in Western Canada, if you want my perspective from a working class Canadian, check out this video here. And if you're interested in personal finance and investing, be sure to check out this video here. I think you'll really enjoy it.